Good morning, students. Welcome back to online session on Java programming course. In the last session, we have concluded the exception handling concept. We discussed different types of exceptions in exception handling, and we also discussed to handle the exceptions, we need 5 different types of keywords in Java, that is try, catch, throw, throws, and finally keyword. Each of these keywords we discussed in detail with the examples, and we have also seen the differences between throw and throws keyword, and final, finally, and finalize keyword. See, these two questions, I mean the last two topics which we have discussed, that is throw, throws, and final, finally, and finalize, these two, like a question, SAQ question, they are important. You need to go through these things because there is a possibility that they will ask an SAQ from this concept. Then we have seen how we can create customized exceptions, customized exception of our own in Java programming. With that, we have concluded the concept. And in today's session, we'll start another important concept in Java programming, that is multi-threading. Multi-threading in Java. So basically, multi-threading, it is a process through which we can execute multiple threads simultaneously. So before getting into this concept, we have to know many things over here, many terminologies, and many terms we need to understand. First of all, we need to know what is a thread. Okay. So basically, whatever jobs you are executing or whatever work you are assigning to a computer, this can be done in two different ways. One is like a process, you can assign the work, and the second one is like a thread, you can assign that same work. You can assign that work. So there is a need to understand the difference between process and thread. And we also need to understand which one is efficient, whether to go with the process or whether to go with the thread. First of all, we see what is a process. A process is nothing but it is any program, any computer program, or any application which is under execution. We call it as a process. Okay. There are two possible states for any program or any application. Okay, whether when it is in uh, what we call stable state, and other one is the running state. Okay, an application you consider, any application you take. Okay, let us take the example of Microsoft Word. Microsoft Word is an application. So there are two possible conditions for that application in our computer. The possible states are, the first one is the stable state, when the application is not running, we call it as the stable state. And the other one is the running state, when the application is under execution or when the application is open, we call it as a running state. So generally, the stable state will not create any process or any thread in your computer. Okay, so only the running state, only the running state will create a process, or only a running state will create a thread. So for our understanding, we can call any program or application which is under execution can create processes or can create threads. Okay. So now this is about a process or a thread. Okay, any running program we can call it as a process. Any program under execution we call it as a process. But now we need to understand what is a thread and how it is different from a process. Okay, so if you read this second point in this slide, you will understand the thread hopefully. So a thread is a lightweight sub process. So it is a partial part of your process, or we can say, if you divide a process into further, or if you divide a process into number of entities or number of sub things, you will get a thread. Okay, a thread is a lightweight sub process, or we can call it we can also call a thread as a lightweight process also. it is the basic unit of processing. Okay, the thread is a basic unit. I mean, the smallest sub portion of the work, we can call it. Okay, uh, multi-processing and multi-threading both are used to achieve multitasking. So when we are talking about multi-processing or multi-threading, they are the means to achieve multitasking. Multitasking in the sense, nowadays we hear this term many times. Okay, whether your application, whether your phone or whether your computer, it is capable of performing multitasking or not. So multitasking in the sense running more than one applications simultaneously, running more than one task simultaneously. This is something to understand. Let us take an example of your mobile phone. If you are texting with your friend on chatting with your friend on WhatsApp, and at the same time you are listening to music. So how your mobile phone is responding over here? It is responding simultaneously, isn't it? It is playing the music for you, as well as it is sending messages and receiving messages to your friend and from your friend, isn't it? So this is the concept of multitasking. Okay, executing or performing more than one task simultaneously at the same time, what I mean to say. So the concept of multitasking, hopefully it is clear for you. So now, to achieve this multitasking, whether we have to go with multi-processing or whether we have to go with multi-threading, that we need to understand. Okay, which one is the best approach? Whether multitasking is the best approach or the multi-processing is the best approach. I will simply underline all those terms over here so that they will get highlighted for you. The first term, a thread, we defined it as a lightweight process. So multi-threading is nothing but executing more than one task or executing more than one threads simultaneously. Multiple threads simultaneously we are executing. Okay. So what is a thread? It is a smallest unit of processing or smallest unit of work, and it is also a lightweight process. A thread is nothing but a lightweight process. So now we need to know, so if you are executing more than one process simultaneously, we call it as multi-processing. And if you are executing more than one thread simultaneously, we call it as multi-threading. Both these approaches, multi-processing and multi-threading, are the means or are the ways to achieve multitasking, which is one of the important feature of any computer, whether it is your mobile or laptop, whatever it may be. If it is performing multitasking, means it is good. If it is not performing multitasking, means it is somewhat what we call slow. We consider it as a slow machine, isn't it? So is it really possible to achieve multitasking in a computer? That we need to know. Okay, really possible to achieve multitasking in the sense, in my if your computer is having only one processor, let us assume your computer is having only one processor, in the sense it can perform only one task at any point of time. So how it is then, even if it is having only one processor, then how it is achieving multitasking? In the sense, it will do, I mean, with the help of the same processor only, it will do the switching between the tasks at a very fast pace. Okay, switching between the tasks at a very fast pace. So you will feel that the processor is doing multitasking. If the processor speed is more and if it is switching between the tasks at a very fast space, then what will happen? We feel multitasking, but in reality it is not performing multitasking. We feel that it is performing multitasking because it is doing more than one work simultaneously at a very fast pace. It is switching between those two tasks at a very fast space. That thing to understand, let us assume here we have two tasks. The first task is task 1, where you are playing the music. Okay, task 1. Okay, what is that? Playing music. Playing music. And there is another, and this is how the song is being playing. Okay, this is how the song is being playing. Okay, from here to the end. Then the task 2, we set chatting. chatting on WhatsApp. So it has to run this WhatsApp application so as you will receive and send messages to your friend, and this way this is going on like this. Okay, your timeline I am showing over here, this is going on like this. Okay, you're chatting with your friend continuously. At the same time, you're playing the music. You can do many tasks, isn't it? You can even download a movie at that same time, or you can download a music file, you can download a video file from the internet at that same time. So I will consider that also task 3. Okay, task 3. What you're doing? Downloading. What you're downloading, it is secondary, but downloading. So here how many tasks? 3 tasks. But you have only one processor. You have only one processor, one CPU in hand. And I will show you that CPU timeline as well, how it will execute all these. You have only one CPU and you are performing these 3 tasks at the same time. You're listening to the music and you're downloading file, and you're at the same time you're chatting with your friend as well. So these 3 tasks, how your computer or how your CPU will perform inside your computer, in the sense, let us say it is doing the task 1. Then what it will do? It will play some portion of the song, okay, some portion of the song, and it will shift to the downloading. Okay, then it will download some portion of the file, then it will go to the chatting. It will send and receive the messages. Again, it will go back to the first. Like this, it will shift between these tasks. Okay, here, of course, I'm showing this thing, okay, in an understandable way, but in reality, how these things will go at a very fast pace, in nanoseconds, we can say. These things will happen in nanoseconds. These switching between the tasks will happen at nanoseconds, at the level of nanoseconds. So we feel because nanosecond accuracy we cannot what we call estimate, isn't it? Nanosecond accuracy we cannot estimate. Because of that reason, what we feel over here, in the sense, we felt that the CPU is performing multitasking. We think that the CPU is performing multitasking. Okay, we think that CPU is doing all these 3 jobs at the same time. Even though CPU can handle only one job at any point of time, but it is going to a micro level, at a nano level. Because of that, we are feeling multitasking over here. Hope you understood this thing. In reality, if you have only one processor, multitasking is not possible. At all, it is not possible. But because of that high speed of your CPU, we feel multitasking nature of, or we feel multitasking in computer. Okay. Yes. However, we use multi-threading than multi-processing, because threads use a shared memory area. So using multi-threading is advisable over multi-processing. There are different reasons why we have to go for multi-threading over multi-processing. Why multi-processing is not advisable and why only multi-threading is advisable, there are different reasons. Okay. The first reason is because threads use a shared memory area. They use a shared memory area because memory sharing is possible only with threads. With processes, this memory sharing is not possible, because processes will have their own memories. If you are considering 2 processes, let us say P1, P2, these 2 processes will have their own memories. So memory sharing is not possible in multiprocessing. But whereas if you have T1, T2, 2 threads, okay, 2 threads can come under a single process. So they share the memory. They share the memory. So shared memory we can get only with the help of threads. So multi-threading is advisable over multi-processing. Okay, they don't allocate separate memory area, so they say it saves memory. Using multi-threading, it saves memory. Okay, this is because we have to go for multi-threading. And context switching, this is also another important term that we need to understand. Context switching between the threads takes less time than process context switching. Okay, context switching is nothing but, here I told you, switching from task 1 to task 2. The CPU is going from task 1 to task 2. So when it is going from task 1 to task 2, what it has to do, it has to save, I mean it has to save the status of this task 1. I mean how far it played, I mean what still remained, where exactly the tracking point, all those details it has to save somewhere in the memory. Okay, before switching, somewhere in the memory it has to save. And when it is resuming this task 2, okay, then it has to halt this task 1 and it has to resume the task 2. So when it is resuming the task 3, what it has to do, it has to call or it has to retrieve the state of this task 3 before resuming. Okay, before resuming, what was the state, before halting, what was the state, that state it has to resume. So from where it will get, because when it halted this task 3 at that time, what it has done, it has stored these details somewhere in the memory, and it will retrieve those details from there itself. So storing the details of the currently running task and retrieving the details of the task to be resumed is nothing but context switching. So here it is saving and here it is retrieving. Here it is saving the state of task 1 because it has to halt this one, and here it is retrieving the state of task 3 because it has to resume that one. So this particular thing, storing the current task status and retrieving the to be executed task details, to be executed task state is nothing but context switching. So this type of context switching, it is very costly. It takes a lot of computer resources when we are doing context switching with respect to processes. But if you do context switching with respect to threads, it is lighter, it is lightweight. Okay, it is lightweight or it is lighter, it consumes less resources, or we can say it takes less time. Okay, it takes less time. So context switching between the threads takes less time than context switching between the processes. Remember this one. Okay, so where we use this Java's multi-threading concept in the sense to develop the RPG games. Okay, where we are going to have like take the example of your PUBG game. Okay, where we are having different sessions. Okay, inside one single application. Okay, at the server they will start one session. Inside that single session, many users, many devices are interacting. Many users, many devices, players will go over there and they will do some gaming over there, isn't it? Okay, so in that, what is happening actually, every single device will get their own what we call the threads inside that session, their own threads, and those threads will share all the resources whatever we have in that session. All those resources we are sharing. So that is the best example we can say. And not only that, PUBG, I have taken the example as PUBG. So games, all the RPG games or all the games will have the multi-threading concept and as well as the animation work, because there also we have to show the actions of the cartoons or actions of the objects which you are using inside the animation work. So every action constitutes a particular thread over there. So animation work is also best example for multi-threading. So without multi-threading, these two things quite impossible. Okay, so these are the domains where we use the Java's multi-threading in gaming industry as well as in animations. Okay, uh, advantages of Java's multi-threading: it does not block the user because threads are independent and you can perform multiple operations at the same time. Okay, blocking the user in the sense, because of some work the things got blocked or the session got blocked in your computer, we call that as the blocking of the user. Okay, it is not possible, I mean it is not happens because of this multi-threading, because each thread is independent in nature, even though it is sharing the common properties of a process, but it is independent in nature. That means it can execute independently without the dependency of other threads, until and unless there are shared resources which are which are making other threads to halt themselves. No thread will be halted without the knowledge of this thing. Okay, so yes, the other advantage or the other important application, we can say we can perform many operations together and it saves a lot of time, isn't it? If you are running multiple threads and they are sharing the common memory, then it will save a lot of time of the user or of the CPU. Okay, threads are independent in nature, so it doesn't affect other threads if an unexpected error occurs in a single thread. So if they are if you execute a process as a whole, because process will have heavy work, isn't it? And if you execute a process as a whole, if some portion of the process gets blocked, or if some portion of the process is raising issues, giving errors, then what will happen? The entire process output will be halted, isn't it? You will not see any action, or you will not see any output from that entire process. Okay, that is the problem. But if you subdivide a process into number of threads, okay, number of, let us say you have a process and you have subdivided that process into 10 threads, let us assume, and in that 10 threads only one thread is giving issue, only one thread is giving error, then what will happen? Other 9 threads, as they are independent, they complete their operations and they successfully terminate, and only the problematic thread will get into the what we call blocked state. Okay, about these states and all very soon we will discuss in our upcoming slides. So inside a process, if we are executing as a whole, the complete process as a whole, even if it is having some minor issue, it will enter into blocked state. Okay, or we can say we will not be able to see the output of that process. Okay, the work done by that process. But if you divide that same process into number of threads, let us say 10, and if 9 threads, they are completing their execution successfully and only one thread is giving issue, so 9 threads will enter into terminated state and only one thread will go into the blocked state because of error. Hopefully you understood. Then multitasking is a process, already we discussed this thing. Multitasking is a process of executing multiple tasks simultaneously. Instead of executing a single task at a time, we start multiple tasks together, and there will be a context switching between those tasks so as to achieve multitasking. Already I explained in my whiteboard, already I have explained, I have started 3 different tasks over there simultaneously, and how the processor is executing all those 3 tasks with the help of context switching I have explained. The concept is very simple, just we need to understand. Okay, then why we have to go for this multitasking means, in order to achieve the CPU utilization, efficient CPU utilization. Okay, to get CPU efficiently utilized, we have to go for multitasking. Okay, to achieve this multitasking, as we discussed, we have 2 different ways. The first one is process based multitasking, where we initiate the works, or where we initiate the tasks in terms of processes, heavyweight processes, and we do context switching, which is also heavyweight, which is also time taking, between those processes to achieve multitasking. Okay, the other way, the second way, is we call this way as multiprocessing, also process based multitasking, or simply in short, in a single word, we call it as multiprocessing. We have the second approach, that is thread based multitasking, where all the threads are going to share the common memory, shared memory, and we start multiple threads simultaneously, the execution of multiple threads simultaneously, and we try to achieve this multi-threading. We call this as we try to achieve this multitasking by with the help of context switching only, where the processor will switch between the threads over the time. Okay, so this type of technique, achieving multitasking with the help of threads, we call it as multi-threading. Okay, so process based multitasking, each process has address in memory. In other words, each process allocates a separate memory area. A process is heavyweight. Okay, cost of communication between the processes is high. Switching from one process to another process, that is nothing but context switching. Okay, sometime for saving and loading registers. Saving and loading registers is nothing but saving and loading the state of different processes. Memory maps, updating lists, etc. is also consumes a lot of computer resources. Whatever you do in terms of processes, it will consume a lot of computer resources. That thing you remember. But if you do the same thing, uh, as threads share same address space, and threads are lightweight, and cost of communication between the threads is low, multi-threading is efficient when compared to the multi-processing. Okay, these are some of the reasons I kept over here why multi-threading has to be chosen over multi-processing. Okay, these are few important reasons. Then what is a thread in Java? As I said, thread is nothing but it is a lightweight process or lightweight subunit, and it is the smallest unit of processing. Okay, it has a separate path of its execution, independent path of its execution. Okay, even though multiple threads working under, running under a process will share the common address space, but each thread will have its own what we call path of execution, the way how they will get executed. Threads are independent. If there occurs exception in one thread, it doesn't affect other threads. As I said, if you're dividing a process into 10 threads and 9 threads are completing their execution successfully and only one thread is entering into the blocked state, because all the threads, they are independent of one another. If they are dependent on one another, then what will happen? Even if one thread is not completing its execution, that means even if one thread is entering into the blocked state, then what will happen? All the threads should also enter into the blocked state because they are dependent on each other. That is not the case in reality. So even if you have divided the project into even you have divided the process into 10 threads, 9 threads completed means they will terminate, and only one thread is blocked means it will enter into non-runnable state or blocked state. Okay, all threads, they use the shared memory area. All the threads which are working under the same process, we have to say, all the threads which are working under the same process, they share the common address space or common memory area, as shown in this figure. Okay, here these circles, they are denoting the processes, and this T1, T2, T3, they are denoting the threads. So if you see T1, T2, T3 belonging to process 1, they share the common address space of process 1, they share the common memory allocated to process 1. Okay, here T1, T2, they also share the common address space of process 2. Here T1, only one thread we have, so this entire complete process, it is executed like a single thread. Okay, so when you are dividing like this processes into threads, you have to observe one thing. This T1 of process 1 is T1, T2, T3 will share the common address space of process 1, but it doesn't mean that T1 of process 2 and T1 of process 1, they are also sharing the common address space. They are not sharing the common address space. Even though T1 of process 1 and T1 of process 2, they are also threads, but they are not sharing the common address space. As they belonging to different processes, they share different address spaces. So if you are doing context switching between T1 of process 1 and between T1 of process 2, it is something like context switching between the processes, because in order to shift from T1 of process 1 to T1 of process 2, what the CPU has to do? It has to switch between these two processes. So it is something like context switching between the processes. Okay, it is costly. But if we are talking about the context switching between T1 to T2 and T1 to T3 or T3 to T1 belonging to process P1 only, then it is lightweight. That context switching is lightweight or takes less time. Hopefully you understood. Okay, so then life cycle of a thread, it is also one of the important concept which we need to discuss. Thread states or life cycle of a thread. Okay, according to the Sun Micro systems, there are only 4 states in thread life cycle: new, runnable, non-runnable, and terminated state. There is no running state. But according to Oracle people, or for better understanding the thread states, we are explaining it is in 5 states. So, okay, 5 states we have. That is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, including running state. Okay. So the life cycle of a thread in Java, it is completely controlled by JVM itself. Your JVM is responsible. Java Virtual Machine is responsible for putting the threads in any one of these states. Okay, create a new to runnable, runnable to running, running to non-runnable, non-runnable to terminate. Okay, whatever the state may be of your currently running thread. So that putting that thread into any one of these states is the responsibility of your Java virtual machine, or in short JVM. Okay, those states are as follows. Java's life cycle, in the life cycle, the 5 states are as follows. Okay, the new state, the running state, the runnable state, non-runnable state, that is also blocked state, and finally the terminated state. Okay, so yeah, here this picture, this diagram gives the exact meaning how a particular thread will shift its state from new to terminated. Okay, so whenever you have assigned a task and that task is being divided into a thread, so that thread, in order to complete the task, what it has to do, it has to enter into new state and it has to exit from terminated state. If the thread is entering into T1, the work has been, the task is being initiated. Okay, execution of the task is being initiated. And if it is entering into the terminated state, if the thread is entering into the terminated state, then what will happen? The task is being finished. We need to consider it as the task is being finished. Okay, so any thread can be in any one of these 5 states. So when a particular thread will enter into any one of these 5 states, we need to discuss. So when we call a thread in new state, and when we call a thread in runnable state, running state, terminated state, or non-runnable state, that we need to discuss. Okay, so see here, from new to runnable, and runnable to running, running to terminated, and again from running to non-runnable, and non-runnable to runnable. So like this, there are our possible options. A thread can go from new state to runnable state. It cannot go directly from new state to running state. You have to observe this one. A thread, it can't go directly from new state to the running state. There is no path, as you can see. In order to enter into running state, after the creation, the thread must have to pass through a runnable state. And if the thread is in runnable state, it can't enter directly into the non-runnable state, isn't it? If a particular thread is in runnable state, it can't enter directly into the non-runnable state. It has to go to running state. Then only there is a possibility that a thread can go into non-runnable state. And there is no going back as well. Let us assume if a thread is in runnable state, and there is not possible. It is not possible that the thread from runnable state to new state it can shift. Or if a thread is in running state, it cannot go back directly. It cannot go back to runnable state. It has to go through blocked state. First, it has to enter into blocked state. Then it has to go to runnable state, like this. Okay. So from here to here, then from here to here, like this it is possible. But directly from here to here, it is not possible. Reverse direction is not possible. This type is not possible. Okay, same thing, if a thread is entered into terminated, that means it has completed its allocated task, and there is no possibility that after terminated state, the thread is going back to the running state or runnable or new state. There is no possibility. Once the thread is entering into terminated state, that means the thread has completed its execution and terminated and stopped its execution. Okay, so quickly, when a thread will be in new state and when a thread will be in runnable state, and what makes the thread from runnable to running, and what makes the thread to enter from running to non-runnable, and finally how it will terminate its task. All these things we will discuss in this particular slide. Okay, the first, the new state. If we consider new state, in the sense we have just created the object of the thread class. There is a thread class available in java.lang package, thread class. So if you create the object of this thread class, okay, the thread will be in new state. If you create the instance is nothing but object of thread class. Okay, and but before the invocation on the thread class object, you can even invoke the start method. Okay, but before the start method, invocation of start method, the thread will be in new state. That means you just have created the object of thread class. That is, you kept like this, thread T1 in your programming, thread T1. So now this thread, this T1 is in new state. Okay, it is not yet under runnable state because we have not invoked the start method on this T1 thread. So the thread is still in new state. Okay, when the thread will enter into runnable means after the invocation of start method. So if you do like this, T1 dot start. This is how we invoke a method, isn't it? And this start, it is a predefined method available inside thread class. Where this start method is there, start method, it is a predefined method available inside the thread class. So if you invoke that start method on T1 thread, then the thread will enter into runnable state. Okay, runnable means the thread is ready for execution, but not yet executing, but it is ready for executing. Okay, it is like a yellow light on traffic signal. Okay, it is like an yellow light from red to yellow, and then the signal will go to red, right? So on yellow light, what we have to do, we have to stop and we have to wait. I mean, we have to be ready. If you have turned off your vehicle or something at the signal, you need to start the vehicle. That means your signal will go green at any point of time. On red, you have to wait, you have to put your engine on off condition. But when the signal is going yellow, immediately what you have to do, you have to start the vehicle and you have to wait for it to be green. That means once the signal is yellow, it means at any point of time the signal can go green. Okay, so yes, runnable state in the sense the start method has been invoked, but the CPU scheduler has not yet selected, or the thread scheduler has not yet selected this thread for execution. Okay, so when the thread will enter into running state in the sense after the selection of this thread scheduler, because there may be more number of threads waiting for execution inside runnable threads. Okay, here not only one, okay, more number of threads. It is like a pool. Runnable state, it is like a pool. More number of threads can be in runnable state, but only one thread can be in running state. Remember this one. So as runnable state, it does not require any CPU time. Here more number of threads may wait. T1, T2, T3, T4, like this. More number of threads, they are waiting. And there is one special program called thread scheduler. Thread scheduler. What it will do? It will schedule the thread for execution. So let us say this thread schedule only randomly decide which threads to select for execution. There are two approaches. One it is non-interruptive and the other one is preemptive technique. About these techniques you will learn in operating system subject, non-preemptive and preemptive thread scheduling or CPU scheduling algorithms. Okay, so thread scheduler, what it will do, it will select any one particular thread from these waiting threads for execution. So if the thread scheduler is selecting, let us say if it is selecting T1, then what will happen? T1 will enter into running state. Once the thread scheduler has selected a particular thread for execution, that thread will enter from runnable state to running state. So what has to happen in order a particular thread to enter into running state from runnable state means the thread is in running state if the thread scheduler has selected it. So what has to be done? The thread scheduler has to select that thread for execution. Then we have the non-runnable or blocked state. Okay. Okay. If a thread is in order to enter into this state, there should be some kind of action. Like see here. When the thread is entering from running state to non-runnable state is whether the sleep method is invoked on that thread, or an input output operation is blocked that thread, or wait method is blocked that thread, suspend method is blocked that thread. All these operations or all these actions, all these events may make your running thread to go into non-runnable state. Okay, non-runnable state. Let us say you are doing something and you are performing some input output operation. Okay, let us say you are reading the input for your program. Reading the input for your program, until and unless you decide that input and until and unless you press that keys on the keyboard, it may take like 4 or 5 seconds, isn't it? After executing the program will start its execution and it will wait for the input on the output screen. Enter some value like that, enter a value like that, it will wait on the output screen. So between that time, between you select the, think of that a value and enter that a value, how much time it will take? It will take like 4 to 5 seconds, isn't it? So between that 4 to 5 seconds, what will happen? The program thread, whatever thread is responsible for reading that input, that will be in blocked state, because it is waiting. It is waiting for the input. It is waiting for the input output operation to complete. So the thread will be in blocked state. Once you press that input, once you give that input, then what will happen? The thread will receive that input and enters into the runnable state once again, because it is coming from blocked state, so it cannot directly come into the running state. What it has to do? From non-runnable state, again the thread has to go into the runnable state. Once the thread is in runnable state, again what has to happen? The thread scheduler has to select that thread, that particular thread, for execution. Then only what will happen? Then only that particular thread will come from runnable to running. So let us simply try to understand this one. What has happened? That you have created you have started the execution of a program. So what will happen? The program will enter into new state. Like a thread, it will enter into new state. So we call the thread as T1. Then it will enter into runnable. You have invoked the start method on that thread, so the thread will enter into runnable. So now the thread is in runnable state. The CPU scheduler, it will wait for the CPU scheduler to select this thread for execution. So when the CPU scheduler or the thread scheduler is selecting for this T1, what will happen? T1 will enter into running state. T1 will enter into running state. Now T1 is in running state. It has started its execution. Then it is waiting for the input entry. Okay, input entry. So if it is waiting for the input entry, where this thread will go? Okay, from here to non-runnable state. The thread will go into non-runnable state because it is waiting for the input entry. So let us assume the user has given the input, proper input. Then what will happen? The thread will receive the input and again it will go to the runnable state only, because there is no direct way to enter into the running state from blocked state. And moreover, your thread scheduler will select a thread only from the runnable state. It will not select any thread from non-runnable or blocked state. Okay, your thread scheduler will select a thread only from the runnable state. Okay, now once again the thread, after receiving the input, okay, till the input entry has done, it has to wait, isn't it? It has to wait. It can't go from running state to runnable state also. It has to go and wait in the blocked state. Once the input entry has done, now that action, input entry, has been performed. So there is no more need to wait. So the thread can go directly into the runnable state. So now the thread can come and wait for the T1. It is something like, in order to understand this thing, it is something like, let us take an example of a reservation counter, or let us take an example of an application counter. Okay, let us think in this way. You have been approached a bank. You are approaching a bank to open an account. Okay, they will give a form. Okay, they will give a form. So let us assume before giving the form also you need to wait in a line. Okay, so you are waiting in a line and you approach to the counter. Then what you are asking? Yes, I want to open an account. So what he will say? He will hand over one form and he will ask you to fill that form, isn't it? So what you will do? You will come out of that queue, isn't it? You will come out of that queue and you will go to some other location and you start filling that form. So when you are filling the form, is that counter representative, is he going to be idle? No, he's not going to be idle. He's going to serve other people, isn't it? Other people who are waiting in the queue, he will serve. In that same way, when T1 is waiting in the non-runnable state, the processor is busy with some other threads. Okay, again, let us assume that you have completed the filling of form. Then what you have to do? Again, you can't go directly to the customer representative, isn't it? Again, you have to wait in the queue for your number, isn't it? Again, you have to wait in the queue for your number. So let us assume your number has come. Okay, your number has come. Then what will happen? That representative will take the form and he will verify the form. Let us assume there is some mistake in that form. Then what he will say? What he will tell you to attach some more documents or do that correction in the form. Like that, he will instruct you. So once again, what you will do? In order to do so, you will come out, isn't it? you will come out and you will wait for that documentations to be attached, and you wait for that corrections to be done. So once that done, again you will go back to the runnable state, that is nothing but in the queue. So again the representative will call you and will check that form once again, application form once again, and if everything is fine, he will open your account, isn't it? So in that same way, the scheduling of threads is being done in your JVM. Okay, from new to runnable, runnable to running, and running to terminated. If there is anything what we call um, misleading thing or misconception thing happened inside running state, then what will happen? Immediately your thread will enter into non-runnable state, and from there to again runnable state. Okay, like this things will go. Okay, then terminated state, in the sense the thread has completed its operations, all its operations, and it is exiting. That's it. Okay, these are 5 different states of a thread. So after this, we have how we can create a particular thread in Java. Okay, in Java program. So to create a thread, there are 2 different ways. We have 2 predefined things in order to create a particular thread. We have a class and we have an interface. About interface we studied in your second unit only. So we have a thread class and we have a runnable interface. Okay, we have a thread class. So if you extend, if you get the properties from this thread class, extending is nothing but getting the properties. If you extend your current class, suppose let us say thread demo class you are writing. Thread demo, in the sense it is a user defined class. If you are writing a user defined class, and if you are extending from this predefined class thread, then what will happen? Your user defined class will also become like a thread. So this is one way of creating the thread. The other way is by implementing the runnable interface. There is an interface, a runnable interface inside your lang package. So if you implement, because whenever it is an interface, what we have to do, we have to implement. Okay, if you are implementing this runnable interface, let us take an example of a class thread demo, and if you implement this runnable interface, then also your thread demo class will become a thread. So these are 2 possible ways in which you can create a thread, by extending the thread class or by implementing the runnable interface. Remember these 2 approaches. Practically we do it. Okay, so thread class. So in this thread class, yeah, we need to discuss about this thread class. It is a predefined class. First of all, it is a predefined class in your java.lang package. Remember this one. So thread class provide constructors and methods to create and perform operations on a thread. So whatever tasks, I mean whatever manipulations you want to do, from creation to termination, whatever manipulations you want to do with a thread, all those manipulations are supported by the thread class. It is having different constructors, it is having different predefined methods which are helpful in doing the thread manipulation. Remember this one. Thread class, only one class we are dealing over here. Thread class, under which we are having so many methods. So many, a list of like 27 to 30 methods we have. All those methods are responsible for manipulating threads, playing with threads. And we also have different constructors. Okay, so only few constructors we have listed over here, like thread, thread with name, thread with runnable class interface, and thread with name as well as runnable class interface. Okay, these 4 are the threads, thread class constructors, which are helpful in initiating the thread class object or in creating the thread class object. Remember this one. Okay, why we use constructors? In order to initialize the objects. So in order to initialize your thread class object, or in order to create the thread, we use these thread class constructors. Okay, remember this one. Only these 4. One is without any parameters, that is default constructor of the thread class. Other one is with name as parameter. You can give the name up to the thread, that is with the help of this string name parameter we will achieve. Or you can even make the thread as a runnable class interface object by passing a runnable class interface object like this. Or you can pass both the things, name as well as runnable class interface object, like this. Okay, so commonly used methods of thread class we have here. I have selected only 10 But if you go to the notes and if you check, there we have a listing of around 30 methods, I think near to 30 methods. Okay, so run, start, sleep, join, get priority, set priority, get name, set name, and current thread status. All these are few important methods, and their descriptions over here we have kept. You can go through them. This is very easy. Once you understood that introduction concept, it is very easy to understand what these methods will do. Already I told you, run will make your thread to perform the action, actual action, whatever is designated or whatever is dedicated to that particular thread. Why that thread has been created, for what purpose. To perform that purpose, we use this run method. Simple thing. To start a thread, we use this start method. Already we know, in order to make the thread from new state to the runnable state, we use this create start method. Sleep, if you want to make your thread from running state to runnable blocked state, if you want to block a particular thread for let us say for 1000 milliseconds, or for one second, likewise, in order to block a thread for some amount of time, we use this sleep method. Sleep, what it will do, it will simply make your thread from running state to blocked state. Join, okay, join, it is a special type of method, join, where you can make a particular thread to wait for the completion of other threads. Let us say if you have T1 and T2, two threads, you have T1 and T2 through two threads, then, and you want T1 to wait until and unless T2 completes its execution. So there you can make this T1 as join on T2. Okay, T1 as join on to T2. Then what will happen? What this join function method will do, in the sense, this join method will block this T1 until and unless T2 completes its execution. Once T2 completes its execution, T1 will enter into runnable state again. That means once T2 completes its execution, T1 becomes ready for execution. Likewise, then priority, all, I mean, different threads will have different priorities in the runnable state. According to the priority, your thread scheduler will select the threads for execution. So to set the priority or to get the priority, we have set priority, get priority methods over here. Okay, to give a name, to set a name, to get a name, we have get name, set name methods. Okay, like this you can read the description of all these methods so that you will understand. Okay, and then we have the runnable interface. We need to know about this interface as well, because it is also one way. By implementing your thread class, your current class, from this runnable interface, also you can create a what we call a thread in Java programming. And when we have to go for runnable interface and when we have to go for thread class, that also we need to discuss. Okay, the runnable interface should be implemented by any class whose instances are intended to be executed by a thread. If you want to make a class as a thread, okay, if you want to give the behavior of a thread to a class, this is also another approach. Okay, this is also another approach. See, when we have to go for this runnable interface, in the sense, suppose if you have one class, that is A, and if you have another class, let us say class B. Okay, over here we have a relationship between class A and class B, a relationship of inheritance. Okay, a relationship of inheritance. So let us, we have here our thread class, the predefined class. Okay, and we have here the runnable interface, the predefined interface, runnable interface. So now the thing, suppose if you want this A class to behave like a thread, our possible option, you can go to thread class, directly extend this A class from this thread class, or you can go to runnable interface. You can implement this A class from this runnable interface. In either way, your A class will become like a thread. No problems. Okay, but if you want this B class to make as a thread class, if you want this B class to be a thread class, then what are our possibilities? Then what are our I don't want A class to be a thread class. I want only B class to be a thread class. Then what are our possibilities? Can I extend this B class from this thread class? Is it possible? It is already extending A class. Can we extend A single class from multiple classes? Not possible. Multiple inheritance, it is not allowed. Isn't it? Multiple inheritance, it is not allowed. So if you want to make this B class as an thread class, our only option, only available option is it has to be implemented from this runnable interface. Okay, the B class has to implement the runnable interface. That is the only option. It can't extend the thread class because it is already extending a class, and extending multiple classes is not allowed in Java. Multiple inheritance is not allowed in Java. That's the reason doing like this, it is illegal. It is not allowed. So our only option is it has to implement the runnable interface to make this B class as an thread class. Hopefully you understood. Okay, hopefully understood. So runnable interface have only one method. Inside it, it is having only one method, that is run method. Okay, our job is very easy over here. And interface, it will not have any constructors to remember. You have to remember only one method, that is run method. Inside an interface, only one predefined method, and its return type is void, and it is not having any parameters. So run method is the only method available inside the runnable interface. Okay, so why this runnable interface, why this run method is used, in the sense, whatever action you have given, whatever action you have dedicated to that thread, in order to perform that action, we use this run method. Okay, starting a thread. So how we can start a thread after creating it, in the sense, we need to invoke the start method. Okay, start method of thread class is used to start a newly created thread. So starting a thread it doesn't mean that the thread will directly enter into the running state. It will enter into the runnable state. From new state, it will enter into the runnable state. Already I have shown you in the diagram. Calling the start method on the given thread, it will make the thread to enter into runnable state. It will not make the thread to enter into the running state directly. Once again, what has to be done? The thread has to enter, first of all, the thread has to enter into the runnable state. There it has to wait for the thread scheduler selection. Once the thread scheduler selects the thread, then it will enter into the runnable state, running state. Okay, hopefully you understood. It performs the following tasks. I mean, the start method, uh, what it will do, in the sense, yes, the A action, if you see, a new thread starts with new call stack. A separate memory area, a separate portion of memory will be created for this thread, and that thread will starts. Okay, the thread moves from new state to the runnable state. As I said, the thread will not enter when you are calling the start method. The thread will not enter into the running state, rather it will still wait in the runnable state. Okay, when the thread gets a chance to execute, its target run method will run. So inside every thread we are going to have the run method. So when it gets the CPU scheduler, okay, then the thread will enter into the run method, so running state. So here the simple example of a thread by extending the thread class. Okay, by extending the thread class, a simple example how, see, very simple things we are doing over here. We are not doing any complicated stuff. Very simple things. Slowly we are, as you will see in my previous lectures as well, slowly I will improve the intensity. I will not go directly to the complex programs or complex examples. Slowly I will improve. Here what I am doing, I am creating a simple class, and I want that class to extend the properties of a thread. So I am extending it from thread class, and I am writing the run method inside the thread class, and I am calling that thread to be executed. Okay, so see here, I am going to my edit plus. So here only I will write that programs. So just take the new program, normal document. So what I have to do, I'm writing a program. So as my program name, yeah, I will give, okay, thread demo. Thread demo. My class name is thread demo. I'm taking, yeah, inside it what we have to do, extend, yeah, first of all save, so that we will get the color coding. Save the program, save with yes, as our public class name is thread demo, I have to save my program also with thread demo dot java. ठीक है, thread demo dot java. Hit enter, program got saved. So I'm getting the color coding now. Extends, okay, class thread demo extends thread. It is a predefined class, so we are getting red color over there. So then come over here. Inside it, what we have to do? Yes, write the run method. Okay, public void, public void run off, and in it you can put the actions, whatever you want to perform under this thread. That actions you can keep over here, that logic you can put over here. So as of now I don't have any logic, so what I'm doing, I'm printing a simple message, system dot out dot println off. Okay, okay. Thread is running. So when this method is when run method gets executed, that means thread is running. Okay, thread is running. Then what we have to do? Yes, only this statement is enough. Now you write your PSVM, public static void main. Okay, inside it string args. Okay, yeah, over here what we have to do here, create the object of the thread demo class. Okay, thread and initialization, as you can see how we are doing with the constructor call of the thread demo, default constructor call of the thread demo td1. Let us suppose td1 is my thread. Now thread 1, td1 equals to new thread demo off. That's it. Now what we have to do, invoke the start method on the td1, td1 dot start start. What we are doing here, the thread is in here, the thread is in new state because we have created the object. The thread is in new state. Here we are making our user defined class as a thread, user defined thread. Okay, how we are creating user defined thread? Simply by extending the predefined class thread class. Okay, hopefully you understood. So this is my user defined thread, and here we are creating the thread, that is nothing but new state. The thread is entering into the new state. Here what it is, we have invoked, we have called the start method. So the thread is in runnable, not running, runnable state. And from here, after runnable, nothing is in our control. We can only make the thread to enter into runnable state. After runnable, who calls this run method? Because here you can see nowhere we are calling the run method. Are we calling run method over here? We have defined the run method, but we are not calling the run method. Then who calls the run method? Your thread scheduler will call the run method. Whenever it feels the thread is it is good to execute this particular thread, whenever it feels at that particular point of time, it calls that run method automatically, and we will get that thread is running and your thread will terminate. Because the job what we have assigned to this particular thread is to print this thing only, isn't it? To print this thing only. So after printing this one, what the thread will do? It will terminate. So up to runnable state only it is in our control. We can create the thread, we can start the thread so that the thread will enter into runnable state. Our control is till the runnable state only, and from the runnable state we can't control. Whenever the JVM feels good, whenever the thread scheduler feels good to execute our thread, it will select that thread and calls the run method. And when it will do, when exactly it will do, we don't know. Generally it won't take much time. It will be happen in fraction of seconds because our CPU will be idle for more time. Okay, if it is a slow CPU, let us assume very old CPUs, okay, slow CPU, then you may see the difference in nanoseconds, okay, in nanoseconds or microseconds. But our CPUs, our programs, they are very fast, okay, so we don't see any difference. But this is one way to execute multiple threads simultaneously. More and more complex programs we slowly write over there, we show you, okay, how to make a thread sleep. That also it is in our control. Okay, I will show you. Yes, just go and compile Java compiler, compilation, as you can see over here. Okay, it is successful. Then run. See, we got the output, thread is running, but we have not called the thread method, run method. Who called the run method? The scheduler called the run method. Okay, and when it called the run method means whenever it feels suitable, because it is not in our control. If it is in our control, we might have called that one. Okay, hopefully you understood this thing, the thread concept using the uh, thread class I have shown. Our next example is using the runnable interface. Okay, we will also see this one. Uh, and I have already explained about when to use the thread class and when to use the runnable interface. That also we will discuss, and we will conclude. About the thread scheduler, there is a separate concept that we will discuss in our tomorrow's session. Okay, so this we will do, and this we will discuss, and with that we conclude. Okay, so quickly go and execute. Let me just check the time. It is almost 1 hour 5 minutes. So just yes. So over here what we are doing, instead of extending the thread class, we made our uh, thread to be implemented from runnable class or runnable interface. So for that, interface will not have the capability to invoke a method. Remember this one. Interface will not have the capabilities to invoke a method. So how we achieve the capability, that is very important. Okay, so over here what we have done, thread demo, instead of extends, what we are saying, implementing. Okay, implements, I think, yes, implements instead of thread. Now it is runnable. As it is a predefined interface, we are getting red color, and as it is an interface, we have to use the implements keyword. Okay, so when we have to go for runnable interface, whenever your thread demo is not the base class, if it is a subclass, if it is already a subclass, if it is already a subclass, there is no more scope of extending another class, isn't it? If it is already a subclass, if it is already a child class to some other class, there is no more scope of extending some other class. So in that case, we have to go for implementation option, implements runnable interface. Okay, so over here the same run method we will be having, but instead of creating here you have created the uh, thread td1 is equals to new thread demo, like this only you have to create. But this td1, it is not the direct, you're not extending. Yeah, in order to execute this start method, we need the capabilities of thread class, but this runnable interface, it is not having the capabilities of thread class. So how we are going to achieve these capabilities, in the sense, by passing this runnable interface to the thread class constructor. We already discussed thread class constructor, isn't it? So just pass the thread class constructor, thread t1 equals to new thread of, here, as it is an interface, right? It is an interface. So what I will do is, here I will make it as I1, or simply I, interface object IO. So pass that IO over here. Okay, pass that IO over here. So now this T1 will get the capability. So using the T1, you can invoke the start method. T1 is the direct method, direct object of thread class, but IO, it is not the direct object of thread class. Neither your thread demo class is having the capability of thread class. It is implementing the runnable interface, as you can see over here. So how we are achieving the capabilities of thread class, so that to invoke the start method, in the sense, just by passing this IO as an object, this reference as an object to as an argument to this thread class constructor. Okay, now this t1.start will invoke the thread method. See, compile, it is successfully compiled. Then go and run, and you will see the output. Okay, thread is running, same output we got. Hopefully you understood. So when we have to go for, see, if you are not extending the thread class, your class object would not be treated as the thread object. So you need to explicitly create the thread class object. How we are creating the explicit creation, in the sense, manually. Okay, so if you are not extending the thread class, in this example, we are not extending the thread class, we are extending the runnable interface. Because of that, we are not able to invoke the start method directly by using this in our case thread demo. Here it is multi-3. Okay, we are not able to execute this start method. So how we are achieving that one? By passing the object of that implemented class interface, implemented class, then you are getting the capability of executing the what we call start method. Hopefully you understood. Okay, the remaining stuff, about the scheduler and the difference between preemptive scheduling and time slicing, then sleep method. All these things are some of the important, and the join method, the naming a thread, current thread, there are some thread priority. Okay, all these things are some of the important concepts that we will try to complete in our next session. Okay, next session hopefully I will wind up this multi-threading concept. Okay, and then we'll be having that synchronization stuff, that another class, and with that we'll conclude the third unit and we'll go to that what we call the frameworks. Okay, the collections framework hopefully. Thank you very much, students.